I don't think there's not consent there. But also, just the sheer quantity becomes repulsive after a while. By midway through season 2, I was just so bored with Kirk and anything vaguely resembling a woman.
So I'm going to question.
Yes?
I'm troubled. I wear the red hair as a public service announcement, just so y'all know. So when you say the sheer quantity, now, putting consent issues aside, because I'm a big fan of consent, but if you put that aside and say the sheer quantity becomes repulsive after a while, is that true or is that slut-shaming?
It's not the
understand he's a
sex,
boy,
it's
but-
the number of times he falls deeply in love in 3 hours. And then
3 hours. One,
In
well,
22 minutes.
actually, one of
3 hours within this narrative.
in one of the stories, he falls in irreversible star-crossed lovers' love in 20 minutes. The episode has a 4-hour timeline in which by the first hour, he's already like, I want to stay on this planet forever.
So he's got a thing for NRE. I know people who have a thing for new relationship energy.
He's never affected by it. That's what repulses me. It's not Captain Kirk's sex life, it's his love life that I find boring.
I think that when we were talking about this earlier, when we were planning the panel, we were like, there's also a fine line between this character's behavior is weird and the writing for this character's behavior is weird. So I think there's some aspects of it that's weird, but I also think the writers are just like, everyone falls in love with Captain Kirk. And I'm like, well, first of all, Spock's there.
Write for
So,
Star Trek?
no.
Because everyone falls in love with the Doctor
Oh,
when Moffat's writing.
Doctor Who will come next.
I mean, I know that, this was kind of an offshoot of film era where, the protagonist and the heroine fall in love just from, glances across the room, and we're supposed to believe it's romantic, true love. But it's, I mean, for our generation, no, spooky, ick, maybe you go meet for coffee at a Starbucks. You don't pledge your love for the rest of your life.
Well, I mean, one of the other things that's on my list of things to talk about is the concept of love at first sight. Is that creepy or realistic? Does that actually happen? I mean,
well, being a guy that literally went from girlfriend to girlfriend to girlfriend and was ready to marry every single one of them, I don't ever feel like I was inauthentic in terms of my devotion towards the girl and then later the woman.
Were you ready to marry them like 30 seconds after you met
Pretty quickly. Wow. Like you see, like it was so evident that people would, say something to me. And in fact, what's really funny is one of the reviews of Rachel's books pointed out how it was nice to see Gabriel because he's so different from every other guy, and at the same time he's not real. And then Rachel laughs because he's the one guy in the book that's real, and he absolutely, by chapter 11, is ready to take Wendy home to mom.
The love at first sight thing is something I'm super conflicted on because I knew less than 24 hours after I started dating my husband that we were going to get married. Now, to be fair, we'd been friends for about 6 months before then, but once it was like, this is a romantic relationship, it was pretty clear it was going to last for a while. But then there's this other side of me that's like, it does happen sometimes, but not near as often as media likes to make it happen.
I mean, when I met my husband, the night I met him, I knew there was something very special, and this is different from the other men I had dated. But we still dated for a year before getting married.
Well, right, and it should be noted that
There's
my husband,
chemistry, yes.
I knew I was going to marry him within 24 hours. I still waited 2.5 years to do so.
Well, I waited a week and said, we're either going to break up or get married. That's how every relationship ends. And so, which one do you want to do?
So patience isn't your strong suit, then.
I was ready to marry every woman, and I had been jerked around so much and been so ridiculous that I was like, I'm done. This is what I want to do with my life. Are you in or are you out? And so 4 weeks later, after she said I'm in, we got married. We gave everybody 4 weeks to think about it and pray about it. And
That's enough time. You
don't
need more. Yeah. So I think then the issue is this is more of a writing thing with Captain Kirk.
Yes.
It's not a behavioral thing. The writing thing is that every episode sets up for him to constantly reset and be the object of someone else's affection.
Right.
And then we're supposed to believe that Captain Kirk
is in it.
Is not even like, I really like this person, I want to marry him, but I'm willing to give up the Enterprise and move to a planet for this person, which is also conflicting with part of the way he runs the ship as a captain
Right.
is that he puts the ship first and those people, and he cares so deeply about them. So then you have this like contradiction
Although
of.
he really cared about him, he would stop going on every single away mission.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
That's not how you be a good captain.
I'm gonna leave the ship again.
Well,
Okay.
and
The captain and first officer always go on the away team.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in talking about Captain Kirk, there's, I mean, God, that I don't remember the name of the episode, but the one with the, there were like the two warring nations, and there was the diplomatic marriage, or planets, and there was the diplomatic marriage that was gonna like fix the war, and Kirk is like educating the woman about how to be civilized, and she also has these like.
Problematic to start with.
Yes, yeah, that was super
Right.
gross. But she also has these magic tears that make men fall in
Oh,
love with
yes.
her.
Right.
And so she forces Kirk to fall in love with her, and this is not seen as wrong. It's just like she loves him, so it's totally fine for her to force him to love her.
Because love potions are totally okay.
Change the topic. Do it. Love potions. Go.
So yeah,
Not consent.
well, so yeah, that's the thing, right? Is that not consent? And this is the same. Conceptually, it's very much the same as what I call the extraneous significant other. Yeah, you're already in a relationship, and this person's not creepy or bad in any way, but I love you, so I'm going to make you fall in love with me. Whether it's a love potion or whatever. It seems like there's a lot of things kind of in that. Magically, we should be together, so therefore, let's do that.
Yeah.
Although, I mean,
Well, it's related to alien sex pollen, isn't it?
Oh,
Alien
God.
sex pollen.
That's on our list.
She had suggested that, and I was like, what?
If this was
What
comedy
is-
sports, so somebody
no,
like there's
I
a
am-
point for that,
yeah.
right? Because
What-
we got her
so-
to say.
Sex pollen is mostly a fanfic trope.
Yes.
There-
I don't know these-
know it exists though.
Yeah.
Well, okay, could someone define it a
So
little
Wait,
more?
wait. I know each of these words individually. I'm having trouble. with
Yeah, I know.
I get alien
pollen
sex.
is when you and the person that you have unresolved sexual tension with go to an
Or
alien.
hatred with.
Yeah, or hatred or something with. Go to like a planet that has this plant with this mystical pollen that makes you just need to fuck. It's also part of the fuck or die trope that if you don't have sex, you will literally die.
Huh.
And so these two people who hate each other or who won't admit their love for each other or whatever are both suddenly super horny and turned on, and they have to have sex or they're gonna die. And so they have sex with each other, and then a happy relationship forms out of this completely
Or really
non-consensual
awkward
sex.
fucking scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
Wow.
there's no consent at all because
That sounded very
That's-
consensual.
At least that's egalitarian. Nobody's got consent.
Yeah, that sounds very, very
sometimes
consensual.
both people have the sex pollen. Often only one person has the
Well,
sex
sure.
pollen and is like, oh my god, I need to have sex or I'm gonna die, or or it wears off in 6 hours and then they'll be fine. And the person who doesn't have sex pollen, who is totally in possession of all their faculties, is like, sure, we'll have sex even though you're totally compromised. Gross.
I don't feel like many fantasy narratives even when love potions are brought up, it's usually seen as like a whimsical sort of
Or
thing.
funny.
Like,
I don't know.
That. I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
supernatural films that have, someone's gone to see the witch to make a love potion, there's always that warning, look, this can't be rescinded, be careful what you wish for. And they go gleefully along their way, and they're back 3 months later, he's obsessing over me and I don't want him anymore, or switch.
Well, and I don't think we ever root for the person who's carrying the potion.
but even then, usually those scenes when they're interacting, they're rarely played as a horrible thing, as
Yeah.
a horror thing. Like this is a gross, repulsive thing, and they're usually played as like, look how wacky it is
When
that
you
this
look at-
person
yeah.
is
I
not
don't-
into
When
that.
you look at what Remilda Vane does in Harry Potter,
Potter,
that
that's-
is a funny, it's so hilarious that Ron accidentally ate I think they were chocolate frogs, and got this love potion, cauldron too, right?
Yeah.
That another kind of wizard can't eat. It's so funny that this happened to him. It's not seen as horrific and awful and horrible. Like,
Ditto Marishi.
yeah.
It's seen as sympathetic.
Yeah, her
Like,
use of yeah.
She's so desperate to get out of her life, and she's so in love with this guy who's not into her that
Who she's never talked to.
So
Yeah.
she gives him this love potion. He runs away with her, and then she stops giving it to him, and he's like, screw this, bye. And we're supposed to think, wow, that's so sad for her.
Yeah. It's
Like,
it's not
hi,
yeah.
you just raped this dude.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's not that love potions are set up as good things, but I don't think texts adequately criticize them.
Really?
They're not seen as rape, which is what they are.
Well,
Which
maybe
is that-
Practical Magic does deal with it very much that way.
Which does?
Practical Magic, both the movie and the book.
Say more about how they deal with it differently.
You know, so one of the sisters uses a love potion on a guy, and he doesn't just fall in love with her, he becomes obsessive. And when she tries to escape him, he stalks her and nearly kills her. And the sisters and the aunts and mothers and stuff basically have to kill this guy to get him to stop. You know, and it's always dealt with hey, these are a bad thing.
Yeah, I've never seen them present. I mean, I can't say never because I've watched Harry Potter, but every time as I recollect the idea of the love potion, it's been a like, wow, there's nothing good that's going to come from the next 30 minutes of what I'm about to watch.
So it sounds like we all agree that love potions are repulsive.
Yeah.
And that maybe some texts handle them well and some don't.
Sure, sure.
Is maybe the accidental love potioning, which might or might not be reversible, does that relate to the accidental pot brownies joke, which comes up regularly in certain things, you know?
I don't.
Yeah,
Taste
drugs-
pot brownies
yeah,
and somebody
well-
else eats them who didn't know they were
But I
pot.
think that so I mean I don't know. Life on marijuana is maybe more consensual. To me, the idea of consent, I like that it's really relevant now. I like that it's everywhere and that we're all talking about it. I like that there's big cosplay does not equal consent posters. But to me, the accidental love potion is just as bad because the fact that somebody made it and knows what it does and allows it to be out there. I'm sorry. Why do you make that? It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
making
Yeah.
a gun, right? A gun
Yeah.
is meant to kill something.
Why are people in the Harry Potter universe or any universe allowed to make love potions? Like,
Yeah,
that's-
yeah.
Yeah, it should be black magic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, relating to the pot brownies thing, like drugging someone without consent, whether it makes them fall in love or whatever, is wrong. Don't do it. That's bad.
Which is something that
Don't.
that drugging in narratives is very, very common, where it's often unexamined.
Yeah.
Or drunk sex.
What's that?
Either getting somebody drunk so that they will have sex with you, or getting together with somebody at a bar who you know is usually too stiff, but then they get all
Yeah.
giggly and happy and then
Yeah.
there's sex.
And that is not limited to fiction. either.
No,
unfortunately
Well,
not.
that's exactly what they were saying about, two people who hate each other, but they have the sex pollen and they fuck.
Yep.
And then everything's okay. I mean, excuse me, in real life, you can have sex with someone after having a few too many beers, and the next morning there's that walk of shame. Oh my God, what was I thinking?
Boy, that was a good movie.
Yeah.
That was a good movie.
So how does, this magic pollen, how does that get rid of that walk of shame, those horrible feelings of shame the next day where, boy, did I make a mistake?
Well, that's what they bond over later. I
Yeah,
think.
and then there's the other thing, which is sometimes you see the love potion used, and then the person wakes up and doesn't know that it even happened.
Yeah.
Which is also gross and weird because then you never know you were even assaulted, and so it depends on how it's dealt with in the text. Like, yeah, there's the end.
You were saying, where somebody doesn't even remember that it happened. I'm going to bring up an example that might raise some hackles.
Good. That'll be fun. Yay.
I'm sorry, Mark.
Is-
Firefly, where Kaylee says to Simon, in Jamestown, where they're both drunk, they wake up together, and she says, "So when we made love last night," he's like, "We what?" And she's like, "You're such an easy mark that she did that, just to get a rise out of him."
Yeah.
That the audience finds it funny, but looking back on it, I'm like, I don't think that was really cool for her to do that.
Well, when another show that does that frequently, where it makes the joke of sexual assault, is Supernatural. Particularly, there's an episode, and I can't remember it. It's in the 3rd season, but there's a whole entire gag where Sam is molested by someone who's old, that older woman. It's the episode where what's her name, Bella.
Don't look at me. I watched 5 episodes and quit.
Yeah, that's
I
fine.
haven't watched any.
Rich lady.
Yeah, the rich old lady, and she spends groping him constantly, and it's meant to be super funny. Absolutely, the way the music is playing, the way that his facial reacts, even those reactions are horrified, you're supposed to laugh at it. And that's not, it's like, that all depends on that thing where, we see it, and we're like, what the fuck, why would you do that? But it all depends on the context of how it is displayed, which is why when we brought up the love potion thing,
Right.
most of the examples I've seen are not addressed in a negative way. So I'm like, that's why we should address it.
So going back-
Are you planning to watch Veronica Mars at any point?
Oh, I have.
yeah.
Oh,
Okay,
God.
Then there you go. Speaking of someone who does frame it as incredibly fucking creepy, that you can be assaulted and not remember what happened.
Yeah, they do a nice job there. I want to go back to the Firefly thing for a second because I think there's a difference between if she had actually had sex with him
That's what I
and
said.
but
She just said it.
but-
It wasn't true.
okay, but if
But she was
there's
holding that card.
so what she's saying is, wow, you got too drunk to remember what you were doing last night. Maybe, and poking someone at that. I'm involved in running the bar fleet parties in Indianapolis, and we put a lot of alcohol into people, and we absolutely talk about consent. I run the pre-party meeting, and I always talk about it with my crew, and we've got pictures up that say, never without my consent. So we work very hard to make that a safe space. I think we succeed. But it's a thing that I have started talking about with people, like, if you're going to drink past the point where you have good judgment, you need to have people around you to get
Right.
back to your room.
Yeah, right.
Or you need to make sure, and you need to know when to stop.
Yeah.
Right? And so, to me, I think it's kind of okay to give people that moment of like, did I drink so much I don't remember what I did? And maybe they won't do that next time.
The other thing
Had
about
she actually assaulted him, it would be a different story, right? But that's just my opinion.
The other thing about that moment in Firefly is there are there are people in my friend group who would say things like that, and then I would say things like that too, and it would not be gross or creepy or wrong, because like friendships and the relationships you have with people can make it okay to say things that it would not be okay to say to someone you just met the night before. I'm not saying that Kaylee and Simon have that relationship, but there are lots of friends who that's not necessarily creepy to say to. Creepy to actually sexually assault them, obviously.
Right.
But not creepy to make that joke of you got super drunk last night and I'm going to give you a minor freak out for 2 seconds.
Well, and it sounds like there's the opportunity, if you were the sober person at the party and the person really did get intoxicated, and the next morning you could kind of find out, you go fishing a little. Oh, we did this last night, right? Oh, what's the reaction on that? Oh yeah, just kidding. Boy, did we not do that. Whew, man, I'm glad he doesn't know that I really like him. To me, if the friendship is there and it exists, then you can kind of test the waters in a safe space without anybody's feelings. Really, you take it back pretty easily. It's the action, I think, in that case that.
You guys ready for another one?
Yeah,
Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's go for it.
This is a good show. Constructing a false identity to get someone to fall in love with you.
Oh. It always goes wrong. Speaking of every Freddie Prinze Jr. movie that has ever been made,
Well,
right?
if by goes wrong, you mean he still gets the girl at the end of it. Like,
Yeah, because the way that
okay.
goes is fake identity. She falls in love with the fake identity, then she
Right.
finds out the real identity of.
Then she's very
and then
hurt,
she's mad and has
right.
to go away, and then
But
she
then
comes
she comes
back.
back.
And,
She's
right.
only mad for like 30 seconds.
yeah.
But only
Right.
because the length of the movie. I mean, in real life, you really run the risk that it's right, that the lie is bigger than anything you ever did right.
Well, that's why that's kind of the entire point of the panel is in movies it's seen as romantic, but if somebody did that in real life,
Well,
creepy.
I've had.
Sure,
I
but-
trust anything you said to me.
Yeah.
Right,
Had that
right.
happen before.
But also, it is a thing that happens in real life, and it goes
sure.
off the rails a little bit. Sometimes people are like, well, I want this person to like me. I want to be,
Sure.
I want to put my best foot forward.
Yeah.
It's all about where that line is, right? Where's
Right.
the line between I want to put my best foot forward and
being
I'm
authentic.
Totally lying about
Pretending to
things
be
I
the
did.
prince of a country that doesn't exist is across that
That
line.
is across the line. That's definitely.
Yeah.
The spectrum.
Uh,
Getting dressed up and using your best manners is okay.
I wouldn't necessarily consider
Yeah.
constructing an alternate identity.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think more if we're talking about catfishing, which is a term to describe someone who pretends to be another person online and then you meet them in person. I went on a date once with someone who pretended to be a very handsome young black man, and I showed up and he was a small little Vietnamese boy, and I was like, how did you think that this was? And he's like, I'm not even kidding. He was like, occasionally they stay. And I was like, well, shit. All right, I guess that works for you, but that's, yeah, I mean, whatever.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think we're all pretty
I've had
like,
some angry single men tell me that because women put on makeup and wear hair extensions and high heels or a girdle, they're being fake in their minds. So why is it wrong for men to lie to them?
they're just mad that they don't shower, I don't know.
It's really good when someone says that to you because that's a big asshole sign, and now you know and don't have to spend any more time with them.
Yeah.
It's useful and it's
Just a
just
slightly complicate the thing.
Yes.
They're on in the same decision space of the putting on a false identity and then falling in love with false identity and then finding out that it's false. There's the accidentally thing, like Made in Manhattan, for example, is an example of somebody being mistaken for much better than they are and almost wanting this to work, and so you kind of hang on. You do take steps to kind of hang on to the false identity, but you didn't do it on purpose to start with.
Yeah.
And that might or might not make it more or less culpable.
That's all a little harder to talk about
So-
because it's
Well,
not.
and one of the questions.
Intention matters, right?
It does.
It does.
Yes,
It does.
That's the thing, if you know someone has a wrong idea about you, shouldn't you tell the truth and explain the situation?
Yeah.
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 So if you
Yeah.
don't, you basically are scheming them.
A very real world issue here is if you have, let's say, AIDS or an STD.
Oh, sure.
At what point
Right.
do you tell them that?
Or-
How early in the meeting do you say that in the first half
Yeah,
hour?
when do you have a responsibility to
You know,
say,
at what point does that
sex.
come up in the
Before
conversation?
sex.
Certainly
Well-
before sex, but is it the first meet for coffee
No.
date?
No.
There's
know,
there's
some-
an argument for fail fast, right? I
Yeah.
read an essay recently from someone who has herpes who says it is literally the first thing I tell people because some people it's going to skeeve out, some people it's not, and I want to know that right now.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so, but the tendency is, well, the longer I can wait, maybe they'll. So that's
They'll
where it's
like
like
me anyway.
they'll fall in love or they'll be
Right.
so invested
Right.
in who I am.
right,
Right.
that we
But-
can get past it?
What-
Related question,
Yeah.
and this comes up all the freaking time. I've had it in support groups, I've seen it online. If you're trans, at which point is it ethically required that you disclose your trans history to your sexual
Yeah.
partner?
This. I was like, this
Especially if
conversation
what
is
they
going
find
in
inside
a.
your underwear is not what they're expecting to be there.
Yeah. That's why I was like, I think this
Obviously, you
is.
don't wait until they're looking inside your underwear, but
Okay.
that's how you get to know.
Of course, there was
Yeah.
a movie about that too.
Well,
Yeah.
But so what is your take on that? I'm very curious.
Well, I'm monogamously married to a guy I've been with since before transition, so it hasn't arisen for me personally.
Uh-huh.
I'm kind of more of like being on the edge of that conversation over and over and over again, and a lot of people are really emotionally invested in both ends of the spectrum. If you see what
Sure.
I mean. There's the why the fuck should I tell anybody the first time I get in a date with them when it's just going to make them, when it's going to get in the way and they're not going to get a chance to know me before
Mhm.
they're like, oh, well, you're a freak and I don't date freaks kind of thing. And then there's some other people that are like, well, if you didn't tell them the first time, you saw them in a bar, then it's completely your fault that you got killed.
Well, but again, there's an argument to be made of how much, and it's, I'm not judging any of that, but there's a fail fast
Yeah.
concept that we're not really taught growing up.
No.
That if this is not something they're going to be okay with, and you learn it early, then fine, they go on their merry way,
Right.
and you go on your merry way, and find the people who are good with who you are all the way through, kind of.
Well, the other thing is there's a subset of people who, if you tell them you're trans, will suddenly be really, really, really creepily interested in you.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I love this conversation, but it's kind of derailed off of the topic of the panel.
Yeah.
And we have a
So-
hand over
It's
there.
funny, dovetail it back in, the reason that some of this comes into play is that in movies, there's the concept of scarcity, right? Scarcity of love, scarcity of finding the one, right? None of this is actually reality, right? But it is what we've grown up with, what we've been cultured to, right? And some of that comes into real life relationships and human interaction.
Once you understand the concept of ethical non-monogamy, although it is not for everyone, I'm not saying that it is, but boy, poly fixes a lot of those things.
Yeah.
We're transitioning. Love triangles.
Yes,
Please.
exactly those.
Every time I come across a love triangle and they're used to.
OT3.
Yes,
OT3
all of them
every
get together at
time.
the end. There's
Form
such
a
an easy
triad,
solution.
be happy together.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the use of a love triangle for conflict, specifically and only, particularly when it's you have to make a choice.
Yeah.
Are those romantic stories or are they not?
Oh.
I mean,
Well,
they're
they're-
definitely billed as romantic, especially when
Yes.
it's two men fighting over a woman, and it's not.
Because the woman's the trophy, right? You understand?
Right.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
the good boys get.
It's not about her choosing who she wants. No,
she's
not
not
at all.
a person. She's a trophy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's about which one deserves her and will they still be friends afterwards.
exactly.
Yeah.
Team Edward or Team Jacob.
Team No More Twilight.
Who was the one who wanted to talk about romantic vampires as a romantic?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
that was
brought
what
that up.
Was that was in
That would've
yours?
been-
Yeah.
Romantic vampires. They're not
Romantic.
just Twilight.
Well, I mean,
Starts with
there's
issues
issues with Buffy. There's but you know, anywhere where, you know, the male vampire
Dracula.
climbs in the window and watches the girl sleep. I teach college and I raise this question and all the girls go, that was so romantic. I said, that was so stalkerish.
Not stalkerish.
So
Just
that's-
stalker.
Yeah.
That's plain
You're
just.
right, you're right.
The worst part is they sell wall decals for you to put on your wall so that every so
Out.
So,
Out. Yeah.
So here's the question, though. If people are saying that this is romantic, it's because they really like I like this person. I like that they like me. Right? That's
Right, they've
that's
already
their
picked the
mindset.
person that's staring at them while they're
Right.
sleeping.
So now we
They're
get into
fascinated by me.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
So now we get into, is it stalkery if I don't like you and romantic if I do?
Yes, right? I mean, isn't that what they're gonna say every time? You
Yeah,
say, well, if this guy,
If you climb into my window while I am asleep, you're stalking me.
Yeah, this is one of those things
Right.
where we have the difference between what happens in narrative and what happens in the real world. Because while that sort of behavior is billed as and seen as romantic in a narrative, most people, if it happened to them in real life, even from somebody they were actually interested in, would be creeped out.
well,
repulsed
unless,
by it.
okay, so what if you got in a fight with your spouse and she locked me out, right? And I go out and I buy
I like how
flowers,
this started
right?
general and then got really, really personal. You're like, and she.
Right? And then you go up and then the only way in is to climb in the window and you have like flowers in your teeth and you're,
But you would have
Right,
to.
but there's a huge difference. Right.
what?
But when these situations happen
If my wife
in
maced
the
me-
movies and television, it's not your spouse who you have a
Right.
history with.
Right.
It's the person you met 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
and I
We
will
need
say
better
that when-
movies.
When I first saw it,
Let's get some married people up in some movies.
when Angel climbed in Buffy's window,
It was Angelus that climbed in the
it was
window.
Angelus. But that was the thing. You know,
Yeah.
we didn't trust him. We didn't think it was romantic. We thought it was dangerous. When Edward does it in Twilight, it's, oh, isn't that romantic? No.
And that's the difference
No.
between whether or not the narrative critiques the behavior or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in Buffy, because it's, I mean, Angel does some stalkery things too, but
Yes.
specifically the window thing, because that's Angelus, because that's the evil guy, the narrative is saying this is not okay.
He did-
Whereas in Twilight, yeah, because he like.
He also did it as
He
Angel.
did. He did. I was
It
just gonna
wasn't
bring
just
that up.
Okay.
There-
He did do it as Angel, and Buffy called him
Right,
out.
yes.
okay, that's,
Said
yeah.
that it
That's
was
true.
creepy.
So it's still the narrative
Yeah.
critiquing it,
Yes.
right?
Well, we have the other issue, and you've sort of touched on it, but I want to talk about how a lot of these stories just skirt over the age issue, where someone is
Oh.
300 years old, and
Like
then
a
someone is.
March-December relationship?
Oh.
Wait, what did you call it?
Like
March,
a March
December.
Of, a March of 1902, December of
Yeah,
2012.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
I mean, Vampire Diaries, hey, I enjoy watching that at like any good-looking soap with handsome men. But, you know, these are men who are 300 years old who are enamored with a 16-year-old, a 17-year-old.
Well, once you get into multiple hundreds of years, if you've got
It's
a
like we're the
3-digit
same age, right?
If you've got a 3-digit age difference, even from somebody who's say 90,
Oh.
that becomes well, is it, or is that just mean that once their contemporaries die, they should not ever have
My
a
issue with it is that regardless, I mean, obviously we don't have 300-year-old people walking around.
Right.
But if you think of it this
Obviously.
way, this is a character we have who has been around, has wisdom, has knowledge and experience,
previous
and is
relationship.
still going after someone who, for all intents and purposes,
Oh.
is still very,
Right.
relatively very young. Even if you think of them as they're 300, but they act like someone who's 50.
It doesn't matter that they look 18.
Yeah.
Right.
They
Yeah.
are a
I
grown
find it
adult
kind of
dating
predatory that
No,
they're going
no,
I'm
after
gonna
yeah,
someone.
disagree
yeah.
here. I'm gonna disagree. I don't have that much of a problem with the age difference in the vampire stories because when it's written with a teenage girl and teenage girls are the primary audience, a lot of teenage girls have fantasies about older men who have experience and who have wisdom, and a 300-year-old vampire is a safe way of exploring that fantasy. First of all, because it's not possible, and also because the age difference is to the point of absurdity. So it's a safe way of exploring that fantasy in which literature where it's a 40-year-old is not.
So there's a Heinlein book called Time Enough for Love. Do any of you know it?
I haven't read it.
So it's Lazarus Long, who's lived for 2,000 years, and in the course of him telling his stories, he has relationships with many people who start very young, who are much younger, because nobody's as old as he is.
Sure.
And in one case, he actually raises a girl as a foster daughter, and then as they get older, they end up in a romantic relationship, which is really, when we think about it, it's really creepy.
It's not as creepy
But-
as when he went back in time and slept with his mother, but you know, that's.
Well, right, and he does that too later, right?
Spoiler warning.
But yes,
Well,
in that book, every time it happens, it's the younger girl coming to him and saying, I want to have this romantic relationship with you. He doesn't ever act as a predator, so yeah, that's an excellent point. So is it creepy on its face just because the age difference, or is it,
Well, my thing and my response to you would be is that if it's going to be a vehicle for a fantasy, it needs to be very carefully constructed. And my worry is that a lot of these are not, and they're not treated with respect to that someone who may be the age of the woman or the younger boy, because a lot of gay fiction has very huge age gaps of 80 to 200 years. Again, unrealistic. I agree with you. You're right. I agree with your point. But even if it's unrealistically, you still are dealing with power dynamics over age that aren't criticized by the text.
And I definitely agree that they don't necessarily handle it as well as they should. But I would much rather a 16-year-old girl fantasize about falling in love with a 300-year-old vampire than a 40-year-old teacher.
You've silenced because it was a good point. I don't have anything to say there. Okay, next one. Can we just talk about the movie Love Actually?
I think that answers the question. I think we're all the
That
same.
sounded like a no.
Did you bring it up?
I did. I actually. So a lot of these issues, even consent issues and whether monogamy is the only path kind of issues and stuff, are things that I didn't grow up with. And so they're things that I'm becoming aware of more recently. I kind of love romantic comedies. The problem is you watch them and you kind of love it, and then you're like,
And then you
But
turn the TV off.
that was kind of
And-
creepy,
Yeah.
and so where's that line between I feel like I relate to these characters
Sure.
and to what they're doing, but I also see that there could be some.
I know exactly where that line is. It's Andrew Lincoln's story in Love Actually. The character Mark, who shows up at the married woman's house with the signs. The
Yeah.
thing there's the line right there. Like
Well,
that is
well,
like.
I can't think of any of my friends, women or men, because I'm bi. I can't think of a single one of them showing up at my house and doing something that wouldn't result in the friendship ending and me telling my husband about it.
Well, so
'Cause
they didn't
Jesus,
have a
no.
friend's friendship.
Or my
He
husband's
was
friends.
Sure,
It would
but
be-
that's part of the point of that
Yeah.
story. So is anyone not familiar with the story we're talking about?
I've been.
Okay, so he's there. It's a triad. He has been. He arranged some very romantic things for the wedding that she's having with his best friend. She thinks he doesn't like her.
Right.
His best friend
Is
thinks
cold.
so, too.
Right.
You're like
because
word for word the
he is-
Wikipedia. If you need a reference.
I've seen the movie a couple times. But at the end, and the writers have said they were looking for the grand romantic gesture, and they thought about maybe putting a bunch of candles on the street or rose petals. And what they ended up with is he shows up with a boombox that sounds like carol singers, and he has this series of postcards or poster boards that he holds up, and I love you. I think you're perfect. I will always love you.
Because it's Christmas, and
be-
at Christmas you
you
tell the truth. I will love you until you look like
And-
this, and there's a picture of like this really old lady.
My wasted
And-
heart will
yeah,
love you until
my
you look
wasted
like
heart will love
this.
you. Yeah.
And then he walks away.
And moves
He's
on.
like,
The
and
movie
now
comes
this
to
is
There's
I'm done.
one.
I need you to know this. This is why I've been weird with you. Now I'm gonna. And he walks away. Now and then she runs out and kisses him and goes back in, which is kind of weird.
Like I don't know anyone who would respond to that with kissing.
What's that?
Well,
His response is
enough. Like
Which is
I'm done.
clearly
I'm
not
moving
enough.
on now.
It's clearly not. Like you just did this whole thing showing that it's not enough. So whatever. But
I don't know. See,
Yeah.
the way I see that is, I need you to know why this has been weird. I need you to know what my truth is, and then I'm not asking for anything from you. I
There's
just
a
want you to know
difference
that.
What's the
between-
movie you'd write a letter?
Yeah, there's a difference between we need to go to the bar and have a drink so I can tell you something, and the poster board music.
But the thing with the poster board music is it is clearly designed so that he's not asking her to respond, which I think is actually good.
Right.
He's saying, I need you to know this. This isn't about you. I'm not trying to get your feelings from me. I'm trying to tell you what has been happening with me, and then I'm going to walk away. That's all I need. I need to say the truth and be done.
Here's why I disagree, though. Here's why I disagree, though, because there is a clear element of deception in it, particularly with the caroling music. It is so that his best friend never finds out, so he knows in his heart he's doing something wrong that is very upsetting to another person. So that is ultimately why I agree with you that the way the postcards are designed so that she's not supposed to respond. Like, I agree that there is a confessional element to it, but if he hadn't deceived it and made it this sort of secretive thing, so no one would find out, I would feel better about it.
Thank goodness she's the one who always gets up to answer the door, because the girl would do that.
How would that?
And that her husband hates carol singers and didn't get all mushy about the first time carol singers had visited since they got married or something.
Give him a quid and tell him to saw it off. I think that's what he says.
Yeah.
Not that I've seen the movie a couple times.
I read that scene as he was basically constructing the situation not only so that his best friend didn't find out about what he was doing, but so that she could not actually respond. I mean, not only were the placards basically, designed so that, I just need to tell you this and I don't want to put you in a position to respond, but he actually puts her in a position where she can't really respond in any way. So in a way, it's kind of like, well, he's trying. I almost saw it as him trying to take any pressure off of her. He basically constructed the situation so it's like, you can't respond to this verbally, so you don't have to. I'm not expecting it because I deliberately designed the situation this way.
Is that disempowering?
That is another problem.
Where's the agency on her end?
Not only does he remove her option of, getting out or responding and saying, oh my God, this is creepy, you need to stop. But I also see it and he's saying, this is what I need to do, and that's enough. That's him making it her problem.
Right.
Yeah.
He's saying, I've unloaded, I'm all good now. Now you
have
need
to
to
I
deal
don't
with
care
the
what
fact
that
that
does to
I'm
you.
your
Okay, I'm
husband's
sorry.
best friend.
I think I wasn't clear. I was saying that's what he constructed. I didn't say it was okay.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean,
I'm sorry, I
that's
wasn't
fine.
clear
No,
on
that's fine. I understood that too.
Can we segue into talking about other grand romantic gestures and how creepy they are?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because they're all creepy.
Way to give away the rest of the panel.
Too.
Panel's over. Goodbye. Okay.
We were looking at this list of romantic moments, and so many of them involved the person who decides they're going to give a speech about how they're in love, and it's always at a school assembly, in the middle of the teacher's kindergarten class, at a baseball. It's always in a vastly inappropriate setting where you're
restricting the ability for the other person to respond properly, to have to
I
make
mean,
them
this is
feel.
why you take someone out in public to a nice restaurant to break up with them. Because you're trying to keep them from being able to have the emotional scene you think they may want or need to have.
Or propose to them. Big public
Yeah.
proposals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also gross, especially the ones that happen in schools, which is if it is a romantic comedy involving a teacher, there is going to be a romantic something in front of the students, which is can you imagine the parents? Tommy is confused because in kindergarten class today, Miss Smith's boyfriend came in and did this whole speech about how he was sorry that he cheated on her, but she needs to take him back, and now Tommy wants to know what cheating means. No, it's not okay.
I love you so much, I got you fired.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
never go to your significant other's school to
Or
do
work.
something. Yes.
Or work.
Yeah.
Go to the workplace.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wait
God.
until they're off.
Which is very common in romantic comedies. It's let's go to these places where that would absolutely be inappropriate in real life.
That happened to me.
I'm sorry.
My then boyfriend really screwed up. Sent me flowers at my work, and my boss was like, "Oh, you got flowers." I was like, he needed to send them, and they're like, "So he's forgiven now?" I'm like, "No, he's not. He is still in the doghouse." this was not a flowers magnitude screw up. This was a country estate magnitude screw up.
Did you get that country estate?
I
Yeah.
did not.
Ah.
She
And now
said
it's over.
ex-boyfriend.
Yeah.
Frankly, a country estate would also have been creepy because
Yeah,
you know, buying people off
Yeah.
when you've
Right?
sold.
Oh,
Yeah.
let's
Yes.
talk.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
Yeah.
we'll do
A
Elliot
movie
first.
that did that well, though.
What's that?
A movie that did that well, I don't remember which Iron Man movie, but one of the Iron Man movies where he buys her the enormous inappropriate bunny.
That's Iron Man 3, yeah.
That's the other
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Let's
But she
let's
does not buy it. She's
Yeah.
not
Well, in
happy.
general, the Iron Man movies is the story of Tony trying to do like huge romantic gestures for Pepper and her being like, no. Stop.
No. P.S. Let me also save the day.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's great.
Because she actually is the one who
I
makes
have one I'd like to suggest.
Okay, good. And then I'm going to go back to estate one because I just thought of one that's not on the list. So go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead. Okay, Grosse Point Blank
Yes.
starts out so well when the girlfriend, whose name I've just forgotten, but she's awesome, finds out that he's been an assassin. And it's like, why did you not grow up with a moral compass? And she says to him, you don't get to have me. And I cheered. And then one bit of gunfire later, and off they go, happily ever after. Great to have a former boyfriend that can kill the guy who's trying to kill your dad. Yay, that doesn't mean you get to win me as a trophy for having saved my dad. So it made me really angry that they had this great line in there, you don't get to have me,
Yeah.
and then he gets to have her.
So
Because
that's
they
a.
have to show that she's a strong female character.
Okay, but
Yes, it's not because she's.
I'm not sure, and I don't remember the movie well enough to speak to that, but I'm not entirely sure I'm okay with the line, you don't get to have me, because again, now I'm a trophy and not a person, and it is not about perhaps a relationship we could build together if I have an interest there, but it's
But I think she's
But that was
saying,
what she was saying.
I think
Is
she's
just
saying-
come back and woo me with some grand romantic gesture.
which is
I'm
why.
not going to be the trophy here.
Yeah, and then
Oh.
she does
And then she
become it,
becomes the
which is
trophy.
like the movie's like, well, what? But why did you give her that? You know.
Yeah.
So you're right. Yeah.
Not that it makes up for it, but to their credit, right, he gets done, he comes up and he says, you know, you can think about it, I don't need an answer right now, but this is how I feel about you. And she takes the gun and she closes the door on him, right? And it was at least one scene later that they're driving away.
There is that, however.
So we're talking about the. So I mean, that's a very common trope, which is that someone does a heroic thing and then they're rewarded with love. Like
One
they're-
heroic thing doesn't
A dude
take
does a
care
romantic
yes,
thing.
Yeah,
yes.
yes.
One heroic thing does not make up for all the mistakes or all the personality flaws. I don't care that he did this great heroic thing, and yeah, I don't want to be married to an assassin. I don't. I don't care that he saved my dad. I'm glad you saved my dad. Thank you very much.
What's
Let
that?
me give you a reward, a gift, whatever. But I don't want you in my bed.
Yeah.
I'd be married to Elliot from Love.
Yeah.
He's not killing people. He's not a what about
yeah, no, I'm totally with you on Elliot, by the way, yeah.
So your thing, you gave me an idea when you mentioned the estate thing. So let's talk about the thing about buying or gifting people with these incredibly absurd, expensive things as a romantic gesture. Is that romantic or is it?
That always seems creepy.
Creepy,
Yeah.
creepy.
Wait, why is it creepy?
Okay.
Just because it's expensive to me, but not expensive to them, that's because it's creepy.
So one of the things that, and this will touch on something that is actually kind of serious, is one of the things that becomes a problem when, especially if you are frequently giving expensive gifts, is that you're basically creating an emotional debt between the two people.
Yes.
And it's something that unfortunately abusive people will do to someone else in order to make them feel so guilty that they then don't want to say no to them.
It feels like prostitution.
Yes.
Well, I mean,
Yes.
And is in fact quite a bit part of high-end prostitution. I mean, that is, right?
Gifts.
That is the expectation. In fact, there is, so if you go and you, and this had to be a CNBC special, that's why I've got to have this much knowledge of it. So at some point, right?
Good to clarify, yes.
Right. So, yeah, Melissa Lee did a special on it, and so you'll pick the girl, and it'll say these are the required gifts in order to have, right?
But you're talking about about having a sugar daddy, which is
No, I'm saying when you pick a woman off a list to
Yeah.
have a night with,
Yes.
these are her required gifts.
But
Yeah.
it's a price sheet, though.
Yes.
Right.
There's a
not free
difference
gifts.
between a woman saying, this is what I'm choosing to do, and if you want to engage in this activity with me, these are the financial or material requirements to do so. And a person taking a woman who is not engaged in sex work and creating that emotional debt, and it's because it's exploiting a wealth gap, right?
Yeah.
This isn't a problem with two rich people. It's a problem with a rich person and a not rich
But
person.
why is so? I don't know. I relate everything to being married because that's what I've been for a while. But
It goes back to, I mean, maybe this has changed, but one of the reasons that women started insisting on, Dutch Street paying their own way was this pressure of if a guy bought you a nice meal, you owed him sex. I bought you a nice dinner, you owe me sex. And so even when we're not talking about these big, grand, expensive things, there was this attitude that guys would stress, I spent money on you, you owe me.
Yeah, but if I buy a house and I frame it as I've bought it for my wife, it still feels creepy in that there's this understanding that I've done this and it equals that. And I don't think it matters. I don't think the income disparity matters. I think that it's
She just has a
problematic.
super good example.
Say.
Toby in the West
Toby
Wing.
in the West Wing.
When he buys a
Yeah.
house for Andy. Is it Andy? That's
Yeah, it was for Andy. She was pregnant, and he was trying to get her to remarry him.
Yeah.
And he buys
Which
her
is a
the-
different
he buys
dynamic
her
than
the
someone you're
house
already
that she-
married to.
But
He buys her the house that she said she has been coveting, and her response is, "You are still the same person that I divorced. No, I am not marrying you again."
I
Well,
think
she's
it's
also-
problematic.
She's
Yeah,
also
yeah.
pregnant with twins that are his.
Yeah.
So there's the argument. Then I think
But she's saying, I am going to have these kids, but I don't want to be married to you, which, I totally applaud that. That's a legit thing to say, I am glad to
Absolutely.
have these kids. I am not sorry they have your DNA, but I personally, for my emotional health, cannot be married to you.
Yeah, I mean, if I buy my wife coconut water, everything goes great. But I think if you, right?
Coconut water
But-
house.
but-
Right, but there's a level where it gets creepy. It's inappropriate to a
and
car.
I think it's even more inappropriate when it's someone you are not in a relationship with or someone you
Oh,
are courting.
yeah.
That
Or
level
estranged
of disparity
Yeah.
becomes much more apparent.
Yeah, to me, it's more of an issue if you're either not in a relationship or sort of the very beginnings of a relationship. If you're, and granted, this is just how personally I think of finances in a marriage.
Sure.
But to me, even the phrase "I bought my wife a house"
Right.
doesn't parse correctly.
Yes.
Because it's we bought a
Thank
house.
you. Yes, and which
Yeah.
is why it goes so quickly into creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of these subjects have really been bouncing around what I see as, let's say, issues with power differential.
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Yeah, teacher and
Yeah.
student,
Yeah.
employer, employee. There's a spectrum here, but all of them are touching on
Yes.
when one person in the relationship has a great deal more power than the other, and when does it become inappropriate?
I agree.
Well, period.
Yeah.
If there's so age differential, you can't help, right? But unless you're writing the story, and then you absolutely can help it.
Yeah.
But
it may or may not be a power differential. Age in and of itself may or may not be. a power
right.
differential.
Yeah.
But especially when it comes to money, it's social status, things like that, like almost. And you want to talk about what you say up front. I mean. And being a raging feminist, I guess this is why all my hairs are all bristled up now, that like it's one of the things that you state up front. Like if you're gonna have a real relationship with someone, then you ought to throw that stupid stuff out the window, right? Because that'll all be sorted out if the relationship, because they're all gonna break up or get married. So you can sort that stuff out when you get to that. But before then, you ought to just have, like, I like Star Wars. Do you like Star Wars? Instead of starting with I'm rich and you're not, or I'm this, and right?
Tony?
So one, all relationships do not have to culminate in marriage.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're not-
Secondly,
I'm not
I'm a
asking
little
you.
lost on how.
I guess you
you
go
equate-
death would
let
be
me
the
finish.
third one.
How you
No.
equate a kind gesture to your wife of buying her a coconut water to, I'm gonna buy this woman's affection with a house.
I don't think he was equating them. I think he was
Okay,
saying they
so
were
I was
totally
lost.
different.
Yeah, I'm saying that there's a limit at which if you continue to up the scale and right, then you've moved beyond what is easily a kind gesture, and so like she really appreciates that. But if I go buy her a car, especially if I say I bought you a car, then I've moved it right into creepy.
But you make a
Especially
good.
when you have a shared account, you're like, this is
Right.
$45
Yeah.
that we didn't-
Yes.
Yeah.
It
Yes.
does remind me every time I see those commercials that come on around the holidays.
Yes,
like,
about-
with the
yes.
car with the giant red
Yes.
bow. I'm like, okay,
That's
first
creepy.
of all, like, I didn't get to test drive it.
Yep.
I didn't get to the interior, any of the features. Like, a car
Maybe
is
you
the
don't
sort of
even
thing
like
that I want
Right.
some input on.
Yeah.
But also, like, okay, so that's our bank account that you just spent $40,000 out of without talking to me.
Like,
Or
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
$40,000 hidden away that you didn't know.
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
$40,000
Yes.
for the
Nothing happened.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Walter White.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
So would it be okay if the ad showed two of you going together and test driving it and thinking it out and then deciding, oh no, we can't afford this right now, and then he's found some way of getting a new loan, something so that.
That's a little better, but I mean,
It's a little, yeah, it's a little complicated for a 30-second commercial. But yes, it would be better.
But also, if what you agree is we're not going to do this, and then he does it anyway, then yeah.
well, yeah,
Oh, and there's a movie of, oh gosh, what is that?
we'll go here and then we'll do another subject.
Oh.
Did you have something to add?
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say that from a sociological standpoint, humans tend to want to reciprocate. I mean, plenty of studies have shown this.
Yeah.
Humans, we inherently want to have equal reciprocation, which means that, and this is why, not talking about buying something for your wife that, when you're both contributing to finances, because that's a whole separate issue, because then you're kind of hiding what you're doing in an existing relationship. But buying someone you're not in a relationship with or not in a shared finance relationship with an extravagant gift, you deliberately create, it does create a power imbalance because the person cannot pay you back.
Yeah.
Even if the money means nothing to you, if you're a millionaire and you buy her like a diamond necklace or whatever,
Yeah.
there is this emotional need to make whole, to make even, that she can't fulfill monetarily, or he can't fulfill monetarily, and there's this need to try and make it up to you, which puts them in debt. And it makes a whole relationship uneven and absolutely creepy.
One of the many things wrong with 50 Shades of Grey.
Oh, sure.
Because Christian Grey does it. I mean, we'll do a separate one. Can we come back to you, or do you have? Is it on this topic or? Okay.
It's, one example of the power imbalance written very well. Where does the Orkosigan saga figure in your reading list?
I don't think it's on it.
It's not?
No.
I can spoil?
Yeah, that's Lois McMaster job. Yeah, that's fine. You can. Yeah.
So there's, in a civil campaign, there's a scene where the Emperor of Three Worlds is courting this woman who was previously and kind of simultaneously being courted by one of his officers in his military. He met her because this guy brought her to a function. She didn't really. He was very kind of stiff and reserved, and she didn't actually realize she was being romanced. And there's a scene where two people who are not parties to this little love triangle are saying, is this going to be a problem? And one woman says, if she loves him, it's not a contest. If she doesn't, it's not a problem. And it just puts the entire choice
It's not a contest.
with
Yeah.
her.
I love
It's not
that.
a contest.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Okay. Belligerent sexual tension. They are so angry that they love each other.
Yeah, they hate each other so much that they love each other.
Like, at least they
Does
hate each
that
other so
really
much that they have really hot.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, does it exist?
Yeah.
I mean,
Beatrice and Benedict. I mean, it's all over the place. Yeah.
what's that?
What?
You mean in real life or in
Yeah,
fiction?
yeah, in real life. That's
Yeah,
what
I
I'm
don't
thinking
think it
about.
does in real
No,
life.
that's why.
Oh,
Here's
yeah.
the thing.
Yeah.
There's a card, Cards Against Humanity card that is getting so angry you pop a boner. I think is the card. Yeah. And I was playing, or somebody was playing, saying like, is this a thing? Because I don't know. I've been told that it is. Maybe not for everybody. I've been told it's a thing. I don't.
There's I mean,
Well,
I have a girlfriend who
just
likes
'cause it's
having
not a
a
thing
fight
to
with a
you
boyfriend
doesn't mean
because
it's-
makeup sex is good.
Oh,
That's
no.
not the same thing. They're already in a relationship.
Yeah, but so when you imagine something about a person, right, that makes you really strongly dislike them, when you have almost any interaction with them, you ruin your image that you had of them, right? So they start out as this thing that you don't like because they did something at a distance that you hated. But if you're in the movies, a lot of time it's because they're forced to have interaction with each other, right? And then when they do, then they find out that they can't continue to hate them, and so they hold on to it for as long as they can, and then magically.
Right, but there's a difference between, okay, so two people dislike each other, and then they get to know each other and realize that they're both human and have things in common, and so get to know each other and form a friendship and then fall in love. And the trope in fiction, which is that they hate each other, and that hate is covering up their love for each other and
Which
their
I feel
desire
is,
to have sex
it's sort of
with each
related
other.
to the whole schoolboy narrative of like you like a girl so you're gonna hit her. Like
Yes.
it's like
Yes.
you know, we I mean I was told that as a kid very frequently by teachers, by the way, like, oh,
Yeah.
it's just boys being boys, which is that
Yeah,
wasn't.
it's just,
No,
yeah, I mean.
But
I
it's an
think about-
emotional intensity thing, right? I see this person, I have a very strong, intense emotional reaction to them. I don't have a way to process that, and so it's going to come out sideways. That I think is what they're trying. I'm not
Yeah,
saying.
there's a difference
I-
between
Here's
5-year-olds and
a
adults.
film kind of related to this whole, it's,
Okay.
you know, You Have Mail, Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan.
Oh, you've got mail?
You've got
Mail.
mail, you've got
Okay.
mail. You know, and he owns this chain of bookstores, you know, big corporate bookstores, and he puts her little independent
Yes.
bookstore out of
Yes.
business. And they hate each other
Yep.
professionally, but meanwhile, he's wooing her, pretending that he's somebody else.
Yes.
And when she finds out that it's really this guy, but oh, he's so nice. And so suddenly it doesn't matter that A, he put her out of business.
Yep.
Or B, that he's been lying about who he was all the time. This is why I hate rom-coms.
You've Got Mail was on our list.
It was.
okay.
We were like,
Yes.
talk about the whole movie, but
Yeah.
I mean, and that also goes. We talked about the trope earlier, but constructing an alternate identity to get someone
Yeah.
to fall in love with you. But you're right. That's that friction of, and so many people loved it. That unresolved sexual tension
And that's an
between
example of
people who hate each other. Like,
right?
Yeah.
His character doesn't construct an alternate identity on purpose, but then there's that, it's like a coffee shop or something where he sees her, and so now he knows, he's aware of all the facts of the relationship, but she isn't, and
he
that's
doesn't
when
tell
it
him.
gets creepy.
Yes.
Well,
Like-
it's the same exact plot as the Pina Colada song.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Which was
That's awesome.
It is.
Hashtag you were not prepared.
Oh my God, it is.
Did we just ruin that song for you, Mark?
Romantic that they wind up together, whereas I'd be really pissed off that you're both out looking for a new sex partner. rather than
Unless
working
that's
on
part of
your
your deal,
relationship.
right?
Well,
I mean,
yeah, yeah.
that's because she made the point about the relationship escalator, and you said, well, all relationships end in marriage or breaking up. That's not actually true.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean-
there are other options.
mine can't end
Death.
in marriage. Wah,
No,
wah.
What?
Because I'm gay.
Well, in some
So
Well, it
some
depends
states,
what state.
not federally though.
Well,
So-
That's a
oh,
different issue.
But
give it like
also-
how many? Yeah, a year, 2 years.
But that's. I mean,
But what if you're in
that's
a
different.
relationship that is something other than monogamous, that is something other than this is the only one person I want to have in my life?
well, because
that's
once he gets what he needs, then the rest of it can come back too.
well, no, but I mean, but then I'd have to undo, 30 years of self-oppression. That's a whole.
Oh.
different- it's like I grew up believing I couldn't be married, so I don't have an affinity for it because I thought I never was allowed to. So it's it's not. I don't have that as an option. Like, and my partner, and I, both of us, were like, we never thought we could ever get married, so we never got excited about it. So now that we're very, very serious, we don't think, well, we get married. It's like. That costs money. We could go to Disneyland instead. That's the
You made me
thing.
think of a trope.
What's that?
You made me think of a trope.
Are you gonna break me again?
No. I don't
Okay,
think so.
you can. That's fine. Go ahead.
From very young ages, girls are socialized in this culture to fantasize about an amazing wedding with an amazing white floaty dress and then getting to be the princess of the universe for the day of their wedding.
Now that should go to Disneyland
Harmless and
instead.
horrible. Harmful and horrible. That's not what I meant.
Yeah, I was so confused because you said harmless and horrible. I'm like, those are.
No,
yeah.
it's
Yes.
It's that movie, and I do not remember the name, but his like rich dad dies, and he has to inherit the money, but the only way is if he gets married in 3 days, and then there's like
That's a movie? I thought it was only fanfics.
No, there's at least one movie. Yeah.
He has to pick one and then he can get married, but he doesn't pick any of the brides in the white dress and he goes and then he does the grand romantic gesture and stops the woman from getting on the plane and it's just.
Oh, stopping people from getting on planes. That's another.
Yes!
That is
In
not
Love
refundable.
In Love Actually, post 9/11, that little kid just runs straight to them.
Right
I'm like,
through,
no,
yes.
Not
no.
possible.
Actually, I was gonna say he'd probably get tackled and hurt, but I'm like, well, he's white. Never
They
mind.
chase him.
He'd probably be fine.
Ah.
Say, it's in Europe.
Is it in
There-
Europe?
It is in Europe, yes. Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean,
But it's
people say
Heathrow.
that, but yeah.
And the flight that he's chasing her after is one back to the States.
Yeah.
So.
It's still,
Yeah. It's a chop.
They do chase him.
That is true.
Really badly.
It's a top. You
movie.
could have caught.
Yeah.
Now I want to know what that movie is, and I swear I know the name. Is it Matthew McConaughey?
yes.
Is it
Yeah.
the one?
Oh.
Beautiful dress. No.
Here, I'll pull up
Okay.
his IMDb page.
What's that?
He puts an ad.
Talk about something else and I'll pull up the IMDb.
Oh, how long do we have?
We have another
10
half
more
hour.
minutes.
Oh, sweet. Is Don John on the
It's
list
until
though?
11:30.
Well, they told, I think they said they were
Another
supposed to be
trope?
75 minutes.
Well,
Oh,
we
but
don't
there's
have panel
no
after
panel
hours.
after.
175 minutes. Awesome. Is
Wow. Oh yes, go, Tina.
Child of a widow or a widower being matchmaker.
child.
Knowing
Oh,
right.
who dad or mom should marry and fall in love with.
Like the Parent Trap.
Well, that one
That
was
was trapped.
The Parent Trap.
Shit.
Seattle.
That's true, right?
It's
Though.
also it's not just creepy, it's so unrealistic. My father passed away when I was 17 and I have lots of friends whose parents passed away when they were young. I don't know a single one who I like my stepfather. I'm glad that my mom is happy, but I don't know a single person who actively wants their parents to find someone else.
Oh.
Because you can't help
Yep, that's
but
it.
think
Is
of
it?
it
Let me see.
as
It's The Bachelor. The Bachelor.
you can't help but thinking of it as replacing the parent you lost.
Yeah, and it's
And
always,
I don't know anyone who would actively go out and try to find someone for their mom or dad to marry after their parent had passed away.
I much prefer the plots where the dead spouse comes back as a ghost to do
Oh.
matchmaking.
yeah, that's what you want to do.
I get. Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's better than the kid doing it, but it's still really creepy.
No, that's what you do.
Could you imagine you're going on a date and your dead husband swoops in and is like, no. I
That
don't
guy
like this."
sucks.
Like,
Yeah.
that'd be a
Honey,
little-
you told me you didn't like that.
That would be the worst. An absolute
Talking
worst.
about romantic or repulsive and the ghost things. In Ghosts, with Whoopi and Demi and is that Patrick Swayze?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm watching that on cable at the age of 9, okay? And I was a fairly genre savvy 9-year-old because I was. And they get to that scene where they're making pottery.
Yeah, the scene.
I haven't seen it, but you want to bring it up?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you should bring it up.
Physically, what's happening is that he's doing that with Whoopi.
Yeah.
And I was like, did Whoopi know that? Did medium Whoopi know this shit was gonna go down or something?
Yeah, did
Because
she
I
have
don't get any
consent?
impression that she has any agency when she's being possessed by the ghost.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that kind of the point of possession?
She does at one point
Well-
say, okay, fine, go ahead, whatever you have to do, but she's thinking it's gonna be like a kiss.
Yeah, it's one
I know.
thing to say, speak through my mouth, or even little kiss, no tongue. It's a whole other thing to make it know.
Having sex. I did not watch Stargate Universe, but I know that there is a plot line in which they apparently have technology that people on Earth can inhabit. They can sort of
that's
swap
right.
bodies.
Souls, yeah.
Yeah, and
yeah.
I think it didn't actually. They didn't actually end up having it happen, but scripts got released where they switch souls, and then the person,
Wasn't there
the
one where they-
body who's being inhabited by another soul has sex with
that
a
was on
person.
screen.
That was on, I'm pretty sure that was on screen, yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, I couldn't remember because, like I said, I didn't actually see it. I just got this story from John Scalzi because he was the creative consultant for it. Yeah, and that's not okay. You don't get to use someone else's body to have sex with someone without their
Well, I mean,
permission.
we could just talk about body swapping as a genre.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Buffy ate everything. I mean, it happens so many times where someone switches bodies and then they use that body to do things the person can't consent
Well,
to.
that's the thing, is do you need a consent if they're in different body?
Yes.
Yes.
It's
Because-
still my body.
Because there
Wait.
are physical after effects to having sex
Yeah.
that then if you then switch back, that other person now has to deal with the ramifications.
So if Mark inhabits my body, okay, and has sex with Johnny or somebody else, I don't care who, I'm asexual. Even if I'm not engaged in that sex, knowing that happened to my body, no, not okay, no. No.
Well, I mean, you don't
Yeah.
just
So,
have the physical.
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. If I just ask a couple more times, would it be okay?
Yeah.
That's another trope.
What if I got you a really nice present?
Yeah.
One, you have any bruising. Two, you have, all right, did that person have an STD?
Mm-hmm.
Three, you have, did the person that they have sex with know that that was someone else in that body? Or the next day, do they say, hey, can we do it again? And they're puzzled that you don't know
Oh,
what they're
yeah.
talking about.
Pregnancy.
And then there's pregnancy,
Yeah.
And
yeah.
isn't it just
Oh,
the
wow.
same as being unconscious?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was literally opening my mouth to say that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just because I can't remember that I was raped if I'm unconscious doesn't mean I wasn't raped.
Yeah.
It's still super traumatic, and I don't see how the fact that your soul wasn't in the body is different than being unconscious.
Yeah.
This isn't a
And
car.
Consent to something doesn't mean consent to everything either.
Yes.
Right.
Like, if
Oh,
if
sure.
I lend someone my boring old Honda Civic, and I expect that they're gonna use it to get to work and get some groceries, and I'll get
Right.
it back in a week or
And they
something.
rob a bank.
If
Yeah.
they go drifting in it, and I suddenly need new tires and an entirely new alignment, that's not what I signed up for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said drifting, and I thought of Pacific Rim, and I'm like, I'd be fucking fine with that. Teach me how to do it. You can borrow my car whenever you want. Yes.
Oh, no, I was just cheering you on. I will say, although, since we were talking about that movie, it is actually a remake. It is based on a Buster Keaton movie. So this trope is so
This is
old.
the one that she was talking. You were talking about.
1925,
The Bachelor?
The Bachelor.
7 Chances, 1925, has Buster inheriting $7 million if he marries before 7 p.m. on his 27th birthday, which happens to be that very day. So,
So
that's
it's-
7 million 1920s dollars.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
$7 million.
That's a lot,
So
yeah.
it's old school bullshit instead of new
Yeah,
school.
so
Right.
this is
Cool, that's
really
good to know.
old
Okay,
school.
you brought up the whole persistence thing, which we actually haven't really talked about, and it's one of the most pervasive tropes, is that if I just pursue her enough and ask her enough times,
Yep. No means
then
maybe.
she'll fall in love with me, and that means I get to talk about Aaron Sorkin because he does this in every single show. Every single show he's done has a male character who's pursuing a woman who says no so many times it's ridiculous, and it'll happen over the course of seasons of this guy pursuing this girl over and over and over and getting his friends to gang up on her to convince her that she needs to go out with him, and then they end up falling in love.
I've never seen that work in real life.
No, because it's
No,
creepy
'cause
and
it's
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
Sorry. I don't know if any of you know House, the show.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You know, with Chase, it says, okay, he's in love with Cameron, and she's like, no, dude. And he's like, well, I'll come back Tuesday. Every day, Tuesday, I'll come to your house and say, hey, still in love with you, wanna date me? And she goes, no. Hey, still in love with you, wanna date? No. And he does this every single week until he finally wears her down and she goes out with him. They end up getting married. But it's like, what?
Yeah.
And that's supposed to be reasonable because it's only once a week.
Yeah, it's so.
Okay, but it.
Well, that's because somebody didn't call the cops on them.
Right.
And
Yeah,
they
the
work
cops would do
together,
anything.
it's not like he doesn't see her.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, if you say that the week that you meet someone and you're not me, then chances are, right, it's not gonna work that fast. But right, there's a working relationship that far outstretches this every Tuesday at 10 p.m. And then eventually there's enough there to make an intelligent decision.
Well, so here, there's another assumption inherent in all of this, is that the only relationship that really matters is when you're rubbing your naughty bits together.
Yeah.
Right? So if
Is when you're what?
rubbing your naughty bits together.
Oh.
Having the sex.
Yes.
Oh.
Right? So that his relationship with her, him being in love with her, being interested in her, is only about if they're going to be together romantically, because that's the only one that counts.
Yeah.
Whereas, if they have a working relationship, and it's just like, yeah, I have this relationship with you and you want this one, but this is what we're going to have. But that's okay. But in the romantic comedy world, romantic trope world, it is only okay if they become, rubbing their naughty bits together exclusively for the rest of their life and married, right? Relationship escalator.
The best friend who's just gonna hang around and be the best friend.
And
until
wait.
She needs to cry on his shoulder, and then she'll realize she loves him.
Then, yeah, right.
All right, then we're gonna do it. Let's talk about friend zoning. Yeah, because it's related to the persistence thing.
Yeah.
Except it's the expectation that actually it's related to gifting as well, because it's creating that sense of emotional
Yeah,
debt.
the reason men think it's a real thing in the real world is because we see it so often in movies of I'm her best friend and that means I'm going to end up with her.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so if, the two options are friendship, which clearly doesn't matter, or naughty bits,
Yeah.
right? And this is one we're after. Look, who in here has a friend that they don't rub naughty bits with that means a lot to them? Like, so when you say friend zone and say this is the,
Here's the
consolation prize,
Yeah.
you're completely negating the value of that.
And let me
don't
also
know.
say while we're talking about this is something that is not between just straight couples. I know so many gay men who do the exact same thing, and it is disgusting. Who have done that to me? I've seen them do it to other people, where they still have the expectation that if they invest time in a friendship, that means they ultimately have to have sex with them, and that's what they're owed. Because why else would I invest this time?
What else is the point?
Unless this was the end
Right.
result, which is not how friendship works. That's not how it works.
It's both, and I've seen it from men. I mean, I've lost two very good friends who are male because I was married and we became, very close. And then they assumed the next step was sex. It was like, no, just no.
Yeah.
And they didn't know how to have a close relationship with a woman they weren't then going to fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, with the male friends I have who I'm close with, and we've managed to walk that terrain just fine because that's not what we wanted from each other. Our circle of friends are all saying, "Are you fucking?"
Yeah.
It's like
Now, do
Yeah.
you?
And in case anybody hasn't made the connection about how harmful this idea can be, like I said earlier that I'm ace, like the fact that I don't want to have sex according to this idea means that I am incapable of having any relationship with any person that is meaningful at all.
Yeah.
That's a great thing to be
To
told.
quote from the classics, from When Harry Met Sally. So can men and women ever really be friends, or is sex always going to get in the way? And I don't think that movie actually ever answers the question, although it keeps raising it. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
that's a less annoying role.
and I,
It's very meta.
Tina. So when in terms of a friend that is a guy, is there a point at which you say, "Hey, husband, this guy's pretty cool. Let's hang out together. Let's watch movies. Like for me, I find that if there's somebody like that, then I quickly introduce them to my wife, and then we can all be friends.
Well, but that's a question of whether a person is in a monogamous relationship in a marriage versus whether they're and I mean both polysexual or polyamorous. Like
Right.
that's a different thing. I think what you're talking about is that there was never that expectation. Is that correct?
it
Or
wasn't on my part of it.
So-
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
But
Okay,
for her, some friends have that expectation, and some friends don't.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, are there?
Okay, so let me maybe explain a couple of things here. Married, monogamous, but my husband works nights.
Sure.
So, and I'm a writer and have been an editor and run reading series and have run conventions. And so I have a very active social life that does not include my husband. We have an active social life together as well. But yeah, I go out to dinner with male writer friends and we get our geek on about writing.
Sure.
Not something my husband wants to sit through even if he was off and could join us for dinner. He's glad to have us go geek out about our writing while he's at work. There are people that find it weird. You had dinner with another man while your husband was at work? Yes, I did.
Did he give you permission? Is he okay with it? Has he approved?
Yeah, right.
I've got another
Right?
example of a real life thing that happened in my actual life, which is my husband had a birthday and then it was belated and stuff was crazy at work, so nobody had any time until one of his coworkers that he's worked with for years, who is married to somebody else, and they've never been interested in each other that way, but they kind of bond. She's female, she's male. They would theoretically be compatible if they were interested. She cooks a lot, so she brought in a big thing of brownies to work to give to him for his birthday. It's like a crap, I forgot your birthday, we didn't have an office party, whatever, here's some brownies. So she gives them to him, and he opens it, ooh, brownies, awesome, cool, you know. And she's like, so is Elle gonna be okay with this? Because I don't want it to be weird that I'm giving you brownies. And I'm like, it would only be weird if I don't get to eat it. Yeah. Like, she thought that like a big tub of really nice brownies that she made would like almost be like read as creepy by his spouse, that it might be like she's making a play for him with her awesome brownies.
And it is a thing that there are spouses who would consider that creepy.
Yeah.
I used to be married to one of them.
Well, there's a basis to this, right? That there's even a term, right? The work husband or work wife, where you work so closely with somebody in the office. This is actually how a lot of affairs get started.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. You're in this exact same field.
Yep.
Clearly had some interest in it.
Yep.
Right? There's a lot of compatibility already built into that situation.
Yeah.
And you're spending late nights working on deadlines, meeting goals,
Yeah.
having successes, right? And your actual spouse isn't there.
Yeah.
Which is why my wife's met as many of my ex-girlfriends as humanly possible.
We've got 10 minutes. We have so many more we haven't got to. Does anyone want to suggest either a trope or a specific show or a book or anything we want to talk about? There's so much here.
I thought.
Love with your rapist as witness Pern.
Oh. As what?
What?
Pern, the Dragon Riders of Pern by Anne McCaffrey.
Oh, I haven't read it. I mean, we do have one. The one we didn't get to talk about was the concept of like fixing your abuser or falling in love with your abuser, like, kind of thing. Like, and not saying that you cannot, if you cannot have a relationship with someone who has abused you, and that there is no process there. But when it's romanticized, like this is a romantic thing. So.
I mean, and this is really tied into one of my is Scandal and Olivia's relationship with the president, because it's so rapey. It's really gross. Like the number of times they're in some dark corner and she's having a conversation with him about how the affair needs to stop and she can't do this anymore and it's tearing her life apart. And he goes in to kiss her and she pushes him away and says, no, I'm serious. And he goes in to kiss her and she says, no, I really can't do this. And then he goes in to kiss her and they're making out and then they're having sex and it's so gross.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Because, I mean,
Holly would fix that by that show, not the rapey thing, but the whole like, if his wife was fine with it and didn't have to like, think have this thing that they want to have.
Yeah,
that he clearly doesn't have with his wife.
And there's also aspects within that relationship and the completely unrealistic view that show has of politics where he's also basically an abuser towards her as well. Like, and it's so, it's awful. Like, I had to stop watching the show because it was like, I could not believe that this guy had not actually raped her.
But there's also a lot of magic in a show like that where she can magically fix things by going and having a single conversation or, and he can, I almost want to ask if there are what is romantic? Everything we've come up with so far has been repulsive. What is romantic? Does anyone have suggestions?
The end of Pacific Rim.
Yes.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
The end of Pacific Rim, where you don't have sexualization of characters, you have two people who appreciate their friendship and companionship so much that there can be a kiss between them that isn't necessarily a sexual or specifically a romance we need to be together thing. That relationship between Mako Mori and Raleigh is one of my favorite things I've ever seen. Actually, and other reasons I love Pacific Rim. I find that very romantic because that's not that Pacific Rim is perfect, but there is so much of an understanding of people's trauma and their past, and how that movie subverts traditional roles for in terms of race, because you have a white man coveting and admiring and respecting a woman of color and believing so fully that she is better than he is. And there's so many things that are just very rare that you don't see in action films. I find the end of that movie extremely romantic.
I think in general, the things that I find romantic are the things that are realistic to life. So we talked about Love Actually, and I say this as kind of a joke, but it's true. Like, the one relationship in that movie that I find romantic is also the only one that's realistic. It's Martin Freeman's, I don't remember the name of the woman, it's his plot line. They work as stand-ins for a movie. They're also naked for most of the movie because it's sex scenes that they're standing in for. But it's two people who meet at work and find out that they have stuff in common and then fall in love and get married. And granted, they're naked for most of it, which is why if you watch that show on television, like on cable, you get them meeting and them announcing they're engaged and nothing in between. But like it's the one relationship that happens how things happen in real life, and so it's actually romantic and not creepy.
I'm not immediately thinking of one, sorry.
Do you have one?
I think Notting Hill is the one that I'm thinking about.
I'm just a girl standing in front of a boy asking him to love me.
Well,
Not that I love romantic comedies.
I know nothing about them.
I feel like at the end of the movie, they don't end up together.
They do end up together at the end of the movie.
So I'll admit I kind of love Matchmaker.
I haven't seen that
I
one.
haven't seen that one.
It's Janine Garofalo.
Oh, I remember that movie.
And she goes over to Ireland to try to create or make up some fake Irish roots for a politician in the U.S. And she kind of falls for a local boy. And it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of non-traditional and I don't know, that one worked for me. And that none of the romantic gestures were pushing my buttons or feeling creepy. I don't know, I kind of liked it.
Yeah, at the end of Notting Hill, he turns her down because she's very, very famous and he's not. And he's like, this is just not going to work. And then he goes to tell all his friends that he's turned her down and he's like, oh, that was really stupid. And
Yeah.
Did he date or was in a romantic relationship with the dude that he lives with?
No.
Wait, what are you talking about?
No.
Like, I feel like they're married and he had previously dated the woman.
He says to the girl who's in a wheelchair in that.
Yes.
Yes. He says, you know, I've only ever loved two women, and one of my wife has now died, and then the other one, and basically the other one is you. And she's like, yeah, I never really fancied you that way. And it's not like this is not news, right?
Yeah.
Right.
This is he had a, and this is kind of great because they're still friends, right?
Well, and that's what I'm getting at in terms of romantic. To me, when you mentioned them kissing and it not being expected that they're right, that to me that is maybe one of the coolest things that I have always yearned for this. To where you could kiss somebody and it wasn't seen as sexual.
Yeah.
And that it's that when you reach that point in life and that everybody's cool and there's no jealousy that then you really have something. And I think for me, I wasn't so concerned with the romantic relationship between her Julia Roberts and it. I was excited that they had a real genuine friendship and that there was real love between those two people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. Did you have?
Not the whole thing, because WoW doesn't have issues, but specifically the speech at the end of When Harry Met Sally, where he's telling her all the reasons why he loves her. And so I love how you can be cold when it's 70 degrees out. I love that crazy little thing you get between your eyebrows when you think I'm nuts. You know, and he just listens. He knows things about her that she doesn't like, and he likes them. It's sort of almost a radical acceptance statement, and that's not what they were trying to do. But that's kind of where it punches me in my feels. Is the knowing somebody and reflecting them back at themselves the way you see them because you see them beautiful. That's always romantic.
I like
when
that.
they manage to
I like
pull
that
it
one.
off in fiction.
Yep.
Not a
Maria.
specific example, but a trope is the doing something thoughtful for somebody when they're overwhelmed. So like the example that brought it to mind was actually from a piece of fan fiction. You know, from Gundam Wing. I made some bad decisions when I was in college.
We're not going to
I
judge.
don't regret it because the fan fiction community has been fabulous. Fan fiction community better than the actual series.
It's true for most things.
It's an alternate universe where Duo is a lawyer and he's working on a case that has just taken over his life. So Hiro brings him a sandwich and from his favorite deli and a can of Coke, and then he brings another one for him and he says, do you have enough time for me to eat dinner with you at your office?
That's cute.
It's,
Cute.
you know, it's doing something thoughtful and like genuinely helpful for somebody, but not in a way that demands on them.
Yeah. But
That is a romantic.
very close to that. Obviously, Friends has a whole lot of issues, but the episode where Monica teaches Chandler about the joys of taking a nice bath, that to me is really romantic because she basically gives him this thing to help him de-stress, and he loves it. And that to me is a very sweet moment. I don't know if they're married or just living together at that point, but it's a very sweet moment between a couple.
The only really romantic movie that I can think of that isn't inherently that doesn't have a lot of inherent problems is not an American movie. It's Bread and Tulips, Pane e Tulipani, which is an Italian movie. I know you probably haven't seen it. I'm telling you, you probably should if you like romantic comedies, because it's about this. It's an Italian woman who basically gets left behind by her husband while they're on the bus tour. Her husband, everybody gets on the bus and she's in the bathroom and they leave her behind. So she has to hitchhike back home, and she decides, screw it, I'm on my vacation, I'm going to Venice. And basically the reason that I find that actually romantic is because she meets a guy there who like lives, his flower shop is next door to where she's renting a room, and they meet with no expectations of each other. And they don't meet, they're not trying to get anything from each other, and they end up forming this really beautiful friendship. And her of course her relationship with her husband is exaggerated to be, he's not abusive or anything, he just ignores her all the time. So, it's obviously terribly exaggerated, but because the romantic part comes from the fact that this guy she meets, this florist, he doesn't give her flowers because, he was trying to romance her. He's like, you seem really sad, and he gives her flowers. And he's not trying to hit on her, and it's made very clear.
Yeah.
So it's this gesture that I have made it, it's made clear that there's nothing expected of it, and they're in a relationship, in a friendship, where it's clear that he's not trying to mac on her. So, yes, I did choose that term. I'm tired. So yeah, I would say that, things like that, where it's, the very the gesture of, I think this would make you happy, and I know you well enough to know this would probably make you happy.
I've seen enough real life in the last 12 months of being alive to know that when you can do something for somebody that is underwater, hurt, in pain, that the last thing they want you to do is ask how you can help. But if you can know them well enough to know how to jump in and help, then that is very well received.
Yes.
Yeah. It's 11:30.
Yeah.
Y'all are the best. That was super fun. Thank you for coming. It's late. Go to parties.
It's late.
Safely get drunk. Please do not fall into any terrible romance tropes tonight. Because we will talk about you next year when we do
If
this.
I hear about any of you making a declaration of love in one of the parties, I'm going to come have a conversation.
Yep.
I just realized something.
But thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all, yeah.
You have seen